And here we are. Welcome, everyone. My name is Claire. I'm the event coordinator at Village Books, and I am so excited for this evening's event. We've been in the green room just watching all of the love on the right side of the screen in the chat. Thank you all for turning up. There are just people who continue to, I see the numbers going up. More and more people are showing up this evening, and we are so glad to see you tonight. I'm going to say a few words about Crowdcast if you haven't been at an event on Crowdcast before. If you're hearing an echo, please try to put some headphones in, or turn down the volume on your computer a little bit. Or if you have more than one window open, make sure that you just have the one Crowdcast window open so that you don't get some feedback. There is a green button in the upper right-hand corner of the screen that says follow. If you click on that, you will follow the Village Books Crowdcast channel, which means you can be updated on what's happening at the bookstore in our virtual Lit Live series. We have a lot of events. We've already done a lot of events, and we have a lot more coming. So if you hit the follow button, you can see everything that we've got coming down the road. Speaking of which, tomorrow we have a special event at 5 p.m. We're going to feature the book, The Blue Bottles Writing Studio Anthology. Pardon me while I clear my throat. The Blue Bottles Writing Group was formed by Elizabeth Jane Price in collaboration with Bellingham at Home. So it's going to be a group reading tomorrow of the four authors who put this anthology together. Their names really quickly are Sita, Sandy, Jane, and George. I don't want to try to put the last names with the first names because I know I'll get it wrong. Excuse me. So that's tomorrow at 5 p.m. So I encourage you to check that out. To those of you, all of our events so far in our virtual Lit Live series have been free, but a number of you made contributions at registration to support our programming, and I can't tell you how much we appreciate that at Village Books. Thank you so much. We typically host so many more events, whether it's in our readings gallery at the store or at sometimes the Mount Baker Theater or in venues all over town, as many of you know. So our programming is a little bit smaller than it used to be. So we appreciate your support, even if that's just tuning in, even if it's just $1, $2. Thank you so much for making those contributions. Let's see. There are so many lovely messages that just keep popping up on the chat, and we appreciate that. I am going to let you know that I'm going to disable the chat just for the duration of the conversation tonight with the authors, and then I'm going to re-enable it when it's time for the Q&A. So I promise you, we'll bring you back, and you'll have your chance to say hooray and good job and all that. If during the course of the conversation, a question occurs to you that you would like to ask the authors. If you look at the bottom right of your screen, it says Ask a Question. If you click on Ask a Question, a little dialog box pops up, and you can type your question right into that box. And then when it's time for the Q&A period, all we have to do is open up that box, and we can see all of the questions there gathered for us. And it's really easy for the Q&A period. So you can do that at any time tonight during the conversation. If a question occurs to you, just click on Ask a Question, type it in, and then we'll get to it when it's time for the Q&A. And then the last button that I want to draw your attention to is the green button that's right there, where it says Purchase Celia's Heaven Here. If you click on that link, it will take you directly to the event page on Village Books website. And on that page, you can find books by both authors. And so we encourage you, if you're feeling inspired and enjoy your experience here tonight, we would love it if you would consider purchasing books from our website. Nancy has kindly agreed to sign copies of Celia's Heaven, so you will get an autographed copy. So again, that's that button right there where it says Purchase Celia's Heaven. So we hope you'll consider that, and we thank you. I think that's it for the housekeeping, the nuts and bolts. So I'm going to say a little bit about our moderator this evening, who I got to do this last week too, because it's the second time in 1 week where I get to see her. So this is wonderful. Cami Ostman is the founder of the Narrative Project, a 9-month program that helps writers get their books done. She's also the author of the book Second Wind, one woman's midlife quest to run 7 marathons on 7 continents, and the editor of several anthologies. Cami believes that words are powerful and that we create our identities with words. We tell our truths with words. She holds a BEd in English from Western Washington University and an MS in Marriage and Family Therapy from Seattle Pacific University. She has been profiled in Fitness magazine, and her books have been reviewed in O Magazine, The Atlantic, and The Washington Post. I'm going to go ahead and disable the chat now, just temporarily. Okay, there we go. And now a little bit about our featured author today. Nancy Canyon holds an MFA in creative writing from Pacific Lutheran University and a certificate in fiction from the University of Washington. Her writing and art are published in a number of publications, including Cirque and Clover, a literary rag. And she's written a book of poetry called Saltwater. Nancy is a creative writing instructor for Whatcom Community College Community Ed and a writing coach for the Narrative Project. She's here to discuss her new novel, Celia's Heaven, with its beautiful cover, which won, already an award winner, the Cygnus Award, Paranormal Fiction from the Chanticleer Reviews. So please, everyone, thunderous applause in your homes. Join me in welcoming Cami Ostman and Nancy Canyon.
We'll do applause like we do in the Narrative Project. Oh, Nancy, how exciting to be here with you.
I'm really excited, Cami.
You did it. You got this book out into the world.
Yes, my book is in the world.
So gorgeous. Well, let's get started. Let's start talking about it, shall we?
Yes, let's do it.
So I want to know, first of all, where did this story come from? I mean, what led you to it? How did it come to you?
So when I had been reading a lot about Mary sightings around the world, the Virgin Mary, and I had found some different books where there was a theme of Mary manifesting herself and then people going to see her, long lines of people. So David Guterson wrote a novel called Our Lady of the Forest. That was one book I read. I read another book that Mary needed a little time off, so she kind of showed up in this woman's house and kind of hid behind curtains and stuff, but you could see her feet. So that one was a really sweet novel. I liked that a lot. And originally, when Celia happened on the scene to be a stripper, then I thought that maybe it would be better to have Mary Magdalene show up in the woods. But as it turned out, it was her sister.
Yeah. So
I also wanted to explore the idea of dark and light, good and evil, heaven and hell. Purity is somebody who claims they are pure, but they're really not.
Right. Right. Yeah. And this book definitely covers, it really explores this. I mean, there's such an ethereal tone to it, and there is this deep exploration of some of those themes here. It's really interesting, like a page turner for me. Super fun to read. Yeah. I'm curious about how closely your life mirrors Celia's life. And, we didn't really talk about this, but like how you know so much about the strippers world. So,
I have never been a stripper. I'll just start there. The story kind of came through me, and it really isn't my story. However, this book, and there were 2 books before this book that I wrote, have been really healing stories about abuse. So I think because I was struggling with my own healing, that I wanted to explore maybe being treated as not a person that is pure in the world, but maybe one who has some bad qualities, which I didn't. But the perpetrator may have thought I did. So I was exploring that. And so, and as far as knowing things that I just wrote through the eyes of the characters. So I don't know, it just was there.
Yeah. Right. So we shouldn't extrapolate that any one of these characters represents you, but that your life definitely did inform or it's part of at least what inspired the book.
Right. And when I wrote the character Celia, and she had her own difficulties to overcome, I also, before that, in a book, wrote a character named Alice, and she had difficulties to overcome, although different than Celia's. And then there was one other character in a second book I wrote, her name was, I forgot her name. Anyway, she had some terrible things to overcome, although she didn't think they were terrible. So anyway, then through all that writing and discovery about my own healing, and the characters helped me to heal, actually, that I became sort of an advocate for people to find their own voices. And so writing is definitely an area where we can find our voices. And of course, I think writing, art has been another area that has been very healing for me.
Yeah. Yeah. That's actually one reason that I love working with you so much, is because you really do support other people in finding their voice in their journey of writing. It's one of the gifts that I think you bring into community. I appreciate that so much.
Thank you.
You said to me when we were talking about the book that you thought if you were most like any one of the characters, you were most like Star. And I'm curious why that would be true. And just so people who haven't read the book yet, Star is the ghost. So Star is the sister who.
So Star is, yes, she is the ghost. And I think I am most like Star of the two characters. If I were to say, oh, I'm more like her, because I like to play with the paranormal, I think, in the unseen world. And I really liked it when she started going through walls and shifting her molecules around and experimenting with time and space. I just thought that was most intriguing. And to tell you the truth, I took a class once where we were supposed to slip through the wall and go outside. And so I learned a little bit from some classes I took through the years that there are a lot of things that we can do with our energy that is supposedly solid.
I totally want to know more about. I'm going to need to have a glass of wine with you and know more about that.
But I also think Star understands that she can talk to people, well, in this case, who are in the body. But and I sort of understand the reverse, is that I seem to get kind of hints and messages sometimes from people who are disembodied. In fact, the building that I'm in right now, at my art studio, we've had a number of ghost sightings here in this building. And one time I was writing with another woman, and while we were reading, my phone kept falling off the table. I would pick it back up and it would fall back off. So it's kind of a familiar area for me.
Yeah, that's crazy. I've been in that building. Nothing like that happened when I was in there. I want something like that to happen. You know, you said maybe we could have a reading. Actually, I think that this might be a good place to do that, so we can give people a sense of the tone of the book, and also just to remind people that you can buy the book with a little button, and you're going to want to buy it. It's an amazing mystery.
Okay, so I'm going to read, and I'm going to start with a reading about Star's point of view. Star had read stories about folks bending silverware with their thoughts or astral traveling to far off lands, but now she was living proof, rather now she was dead proof, that the veil between physical life and what she called the spirit world was as sheer as the palest lace wing. Star sat on the edge of Celia's bed watching Johnny pull on his pants. Oh, how she had obsessed over him while dusting the aisles of organic peas and honey granola. At the same time she was going boy crazy, she also realized that anyone could walk through walls if they tried. So when a customer wasn't waiting to be checked out, Star flattened her cells and slipped through the lath and plaster next to the cash register, weaving between the molecules of the message-studded bulletin board, passing shelves laden with nasty-smelling dried herbs her boss kept in gallon jars, to arrive in cold storage, where tofu and raw milk sat in stacked crates and organic vegetables crowded wooden bins. That was where she hovered, taking in the shimmering light emanating from sweet potatoes and peppers, their beauty mesmerizing and somehow enlivening. After the adventure, she returned to the checkout stand and helped a customer purchase a jar of Miracle Energy. Besides walking through walls, she loved to visit the starry tunnel before falling asleep at night. She once told Johnny about the whoosh of her spirit lifting out the top of her head as she coursed towards the vastness of everything. Sometimes it frightened her, the speed at which her spirit ripped free. Johnny once asked her if anyone ever got stuck out there in the ethers. She replied with what her spirit guide always said, "Nothing in this vast universe will hurt you, dear." Star wondered if that day in the boat, if she hadn't tried so hard to convince her sister that the preacher was the cause of Celia's Jezebel behavior, would she still be living upstairs, still be listening to the church house's front door open with a hush, then clicks lightly closed, still hear her sister and some guy's footsteps hesitate at the bottom of the stairwell before a muffled thud of the attic door shut out their giggles? Maybe it wasn't so bad, but really the last thing she wanted was to hear some jerk yowling like a wildcat in her parents' old bedroom. It was on nights like that that she would cover her head with a pillow and escape into the tunnel, taking care not to float too close to the glistening light at the end. I think I'm going to stop right there.
Okay. Right, so we have two sisters. We have, they're twins. One is alive. She's a stripper. The other one is in the next realm. And that's Star, whose point of view you just read from. And then there's this interaction between the two realms. So there's a lot of mystical explored in this book. And I'm just curious why it is important. You've mentioned that you have a fascination with the mystical, and I'm curious about what led to that fascination with the mystical and why it's important to you to explore it in your writing, because this isn't the only place where you've explored mystical experiences.
I grew up in a home that was dysfunctional, and I had a way of making myself feel better to kind of escape, I think, out of myself. And I actually can remember lying on the bed and looking up at the ceiling and seeing something, although it was more like just air movement. It wasn't like a shape of an angel or something. But I had a feeling at that point that something was there besides what was in my house and my rooms that was looking out after me. And that made me feel better. And I also had an experience where my brother, after he died, he came to me in a vision in my bedroom one morning early. I was just waking up, and he showed me his life. So I think that what is real, and a lot of us don't get to see things like that, but I have seen them. So I think that's kind of my way in the world.
Yeah. So it's sort of your orientation, and it's your experience to explore this. And so that leads me to my next question, which is about the point of view that you have in this book. Really, you've written this story. You just read a piece that was from the point of view of Star after she's, passed over into this other realm. But the story itself is told from the perspective of Celia, who is the twin sister, still alive, and also the the boyfriend of Celia and the father of Celia and Star. There's all of these different points of view. And in particular, the one that was really interesting to me was the preacher, who is the father of Celia, who's an antagonist. He's not a good guy. So I'm just curious about how you decided to explore from all of these different points of view.
I think the main thing I wanted to do is get in the heads of the characters, and I really knew that I couldn't describe what was going through Ed Monroe. That's the preacher. I couldn't tell the reader what was going through his head without being in his point of view. So Celia could have speculated, but or somebody else in the story could have. But I think that was the decision I made, was to get in his head. And since I write stream of consciousness, and which is really just following all the words that are coming into my mind, I'm not thinking them up. I'm not trying to think them up. I'm just taking dictation. So I was able to become the preacher in a way, and as well as the other characters. But when I became him, and his thoughts and his dialogue were coming kind of through me, and I was writing them down. And it was an interesting experience because I had an empathy for him that I don't think I would if I just written his character as sort of this bad,
right,
good but bad person.
Right. Yeah. What was that like for you to have empathy for that character by writing from his POV? Did it surprise you while this is a writerly question, but I mean, did it surprise you while you were writing that you experienced empathy for him?
Yes, it did surprise me. And my teachers, Bob and Jack, and when I was first learning to write fiction, they said, you got to love all your characters. You have to love them, because if you don't like that character and they're in your book, then people are, just like, it's going to be a different character that you're building if you love them. So I really, being in his head, I mean, he's so conflicted that I really felt like I knew something that was okay about him.
Yeah. Yeah, I thought that was interesting too, because I wanted to hate him, but I also felt that he was conflicted. I felt that he was a very complex character. He wasn't just an evildoer. There was more to him than that. So I really thought you pulled that off. Yeah, I want to ask one more question about about kind of the mystical piece before we go to the next reading. There's something in the book called the Monroe Miracle. And that's where there are these spontaneous healings. And I'm curious how you came up with the Monroe Miracle.
Well, I believe in miracles, and I think that sounds kind of trite. I think it's a song, right? But I do believe in miracles, and I've read a lot about healing, and actually have kind of experimented in a way, like having a bad cold and thinking, if I think the right things and see myself as perfectly well, that couldn't I just be well? And so in that way, I played with that, and I actually have had some recoveries, real speedy recoveries, by seeing myself as well. It doesn't always work, because I can't always get my head totally around the idea that I am totally well. So in those moments, sure. But I think then with the Mary sightings and miracles happened there. I went to Chamayo, and I got to go into the little shrine where people would go in and take a little bit of the soil that was blessed somehow. I don't remember what happened there, but they left their crutches. They had miracles happen and left their crutches and walked out of there. So I believe in miracles. So and then the Monroe family, they just started having miracles. So, but it was mostly the men. So
right, which is a twist in the story. It's almost always the men who receive the miracle and tell. And so I'm not going to give away the story because, well, I mean, some of it might be given away in your readings, but people should buy the book. So why don't we have you read your next reading to us?
Okay. So this is after Celia's been out in the woods. She's been walking to her job. She walks through the forest at night to her job. The door banged open. Jade whirled to see Celia's tear-streaked face, her torn jeans, blood staining her knees and palms. "She's out there," Celia said. She held out her bloody hands as she collapsed into his arms. "Who's out there? Who did this to you?" Jay helped her to the kitchen sink. "I told you not to walk through the woods. God damn it, Seal." He took both her hands and held them beneath warm running water. "Shit, be careful," she said. "It stings." "Hold still." Jay shifted his stance as Celia's weight dropped against him. Celia gulped between sobs. "I got lost in the woods, and then I tripped and fell in the scree. I landed on all fours. It was horrible." He gently dried her hands with a towel. "It's deep. You're going to need stitches," he said, and pressed napkins over the injuries. "Press your palms together. It'll stop the bleeding." "My knees." Jay helped her to the rocker. "That's why I don't want you walking through the woods to work. See, you were followed. It's dangerous out there. You're lucky." I know. Jay helped her out of the torn and bloody jeans. "Your knees," he said. "They'll need stitches too." He headed for the bathroom, returning with a bag of cotton balls and Bactine. He cleaned her knees and sprayed them with ointment. "You're out of Band-Aids," he said, and covered the injuries with more napkins. We'll pick some up at the hospital pharmacy once we get there." He looked at his watch. It wasn't long until he was to meet up with his new partner, Johnny. He'd radio him once he got Celia settled in the cruiser. "You've got work, JJ," she said. "Just go. I'll be fine. I'm taking you to the hospital, but first I'll check outside for the perp." Jay slipped on his boots and coat and grabbed the fire poker from beside the wood stove. He leaned in and kissed Celia's forehead. "I have my keys. Don't unlock the door for anyone. Hear me?" She nodded. A half hour later, Celia heard Jay's boots on the steps and the key turning in the lock. He burst into the kitchen, the fire poker gripped in his right hand, looking cop-like. "Nada. I walked around the north end of the lake. It's dark, you know. I couldn't see much. Probably some perv from the club stalking you." Jay crossed the floor to the telephone. He set the poker on the counter and picked up the receiver to dial the precinct. "Please, don't call it in." Celia wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "It's probably a practical joke. No one got hurt." "You've got gashes in your knees and palms. If that isn't hurt, I don't know what is. And if there's someone hiding out there scaring my woman, the force needs to know about it." He dropped the receiver in the cradle and moved to the refrigerator. "We'll ice your knees while I get ready for work." He took out the ice tray and wrapped cubes in a towel. "I'm worried about you. The perp could turn violent next time." Jay sat down next to her and peeled back the throw. "I'm driving you to work from now on." "Right. How would that look? A stripper arriving in a cop car?" Celia said, wishing he wouldn't fuss so much. "Dan's going to give me hell for having banged up my gorgeous legs." She started to cry again. "He'll give my spot to Donna." "That's the least of your worries," he said, and peeled off the bloody napkins. "What the hell?" He dropped the ice pack on the floor, cubes scattered across the floor in all directions. Jay jumped to his feet and began pacing back and forth. He crossed his arms over his chest and stopped to face Celia. "What's going on here?" She shrugged. "How should I know?" Perfect pink flesh rounded Celia's knees. She removed the towel from her hands and turned her palms upright in her lap. They were flawless as well, smooth and rosy beneath the bare kitchen bulb. Gasping, she drew fingers up over her thighs. The burn scars were gone as well. "It's the miracle, JJ. You know, like Monroes have. Well, the men in the family have had, that is. And now me."
Yeah, so this is the first time that a woman has had the Monroe miracle and the spontaneous healing. Super interesting. Why did you make Celia a stripper?
I think that was the thing that irritated the preacher the most. It irritated the people in the town. It even her boyfriend Jay, who's a cop, that she's not good material for a cop's wife, that she needs to not be like that, you know. So I think it just made a lot of conflict in the story between the characters.
Yeah.
Plus,
right.
Plus, I was I took ballet for a long time, and then I took modern dance, and I love to dance. So I think making her a dancer was a good call. But I've never done the stripping.
Right. Let the record stand. She's never been a stripper.
Been a stripper.
Nancy, I want to sort of switch gears for a second. I noticed the art, this gorgeous art behind you, and yeah, people can see it. So you're a visual artist as well. And I'm just love to ask you about how your writing inspires your art and your art inspires your writing, and how you toggle between these two crafts.
Well, I think about that quite a bit, and actually the balance between them is sometimes, well, when I was painting a lot more, I haven't been painting quite as much for a while, but it was hard to balance. But so I always scheduled myself. But I think painting really frees me. It in a different way than writing frees me, because I don't really have the thinking part with the painting. I mean, there's decision making with color and etc. But with writing, then I'm thinking about story. I'm thinking about spelling and sentences, and especially in editing where it can get kind of tight. I can get tight in myself, and then I can come into the studio and be much more fluid and I think maybe relaxed in a way.
Yeah. And so I know, in this book, this gorgeous book, looks backwards. I don't know if it looks backwards to you or not, but I love this cover so much. It's so, so, so pretty. And I saw it early on when you were still working on it. But I mean, it's always been gorgeous, but what you landed on is just, look at that, everybody. The colors and the mystery. That cover looks like what the story is, for sure. So, you really are exploring some questions in this book, and I know you worked on it for a very long time. I'm curious how you knew that it was time to go to publication, and how long this book took you to write.
So I was writing a book called Stealing Time, and then I decided to go to graduate school, and that book was almost finished, and I didn't want to take that to graduate school. So I started this new book, Celia's Heaven. I don't remember if it was called that at first, but I actually wrote a scene with Celia stripping and dancing, and that was my graduate to get into graduate school. And there was a little shock, I think, but that's okay. I got in, and so that was in 2003, and I wrote the book during. I got a rough draft done by the time I graduated, and that was my thesis. And then, of course, I had to really write that book, because it really wasn't. It was very rough. It had different characters. It had a character in it called Madame Wolfie, who was a psychic with a crystal ball. And then between I guess it was last Christmas, Jess and I talked about publishing this book, Jess from Penchant Press, who is here tonight. Hi, Jess. And I was really excited because she was excited about publishing it. And it needed a lot. It still needed a lot of editing, although she said it was in great shape, and I love that. But I know we did a lot of editing. So it really was, through those years, I also wrote another book. So between 2003 and getting this to Jess, I wrote Struck, my memoir about being on the fire lookout tower.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and one thing that I love about this book is that really, and that I love about you, is that you're a writer's writer. I mean, so as I was reading through the book, not only was I riveted by the story, but I was also really riveted by the craft and your example of how to create a story arc and bring story to resolution. So, we're going to go to another reading in a minute, but I do want to let people know that we're going to have a special book club with you in a month. It's going to be October 22nd at 5 p.m. And there's a Zoom link to sign up for that book club meeting. It's over in there's two ways that people could get access to that link. One would be if they go over to the Narrative Project Facebook group. There is a link up there for people to sign up. It's just a Zoom link. And then the other way would be when we go back to chat, when people come back on and chat, if they put their email addresses, I'll take a screenshot of that chat and make sure that I send out an email to let people know how they can sign up for it. But I think one of the beautiful things about your writing and about this book is that it's not only just a great story to read, but it's a wonderful example of craft for writers, which I know is a passion of yours. So, and thank you for being willing to do that with us.
Right, I'm happy about it.
So if you would love to do a third reading, we would love to hear it.
Okay. So I chose this reading because it gives us a little bit of I'll give you a little feeling of the weather, which permeates everything for quite a bit of the book. And this is Celia's point of view. Great gusts of wind whipped swirls of snow around Celia's bundled form, stinging her face with icy pricks. Hooded, she lowered her head into the storm and stumbled across the yard, wielding the flashlight with its bobbing beam. Fuck, she said, snow spilling into her rubber boots, her silk robe whipping around below the hem of her coat as she staggered across the snowy yard to the boathouse. She and JJ had secreted away a rowboat 2 summers ago. He said he wanted to go fishing out beyond the lilies, but she'd shaken her head, knowing how her daddy felt about boats and the tangled roots. Not there. That's where the monster lives, she had said, immediately feeling childish for spouting such nonsense, but she went on, reciting the myth that her mother had repeated to the twins often. There's a lake monster living under the surface, always ready to pull an innocent one beneath. Jay smirked, but she went on. A kid drowned, his legs tangled in lakeweed. People will still swear that the hoarse cries of the drowned boy can be heard echoing through the valley on particularly dark and lonely nights. Together, they heaved the boat under the boathouse deck to hide it from the preacher's prying eyes. Now she single-handedly wrestled the rowboat from its hiding place, thankful the deck overhang had kept it dry. Gasping, she pulled and pushed, rocking and dragging it through the snow-covered tules toward the water. Twice, she slipped and fell on her knees and struggled to her feet again, brushing snow from her legs. One more pull, and the boat began to float. Celia splashed into the water, frigid legs sloshing over the top of her boots and soaking her robe in the hem of her coat. She secured the urn beneath the seat. Then she half stepped, half fell into the boat, settling herself on a bench seat. She pushed off, oars secure in the oarlocks. She pulled hard, using her anger at her daddy's constant criticism to fuel her fight against the icy headwind. What she did or didn't do was none of his business, but Daddy always went a little crazy when it came to the lake. Probably had something to do with her grandfather's near drowning and losing Star in the root-strewn lake bottom. She remembered the day he stopped by last fall to check on the apple crop. Celia had been out taking her morning swim when he had strode across the yard, shouting to her to immediately remove herself from the devil's maw. She continued crawling across the lake, swimming toward the lilies as she always did, his flailing shape on shore growing smaller and smaller. Celia kept her head lowered as she rowed. The wind buffeted the little boat, water breaking against its wooden sides in icy sprays. The day Star drowned, the two of them argued bitterly. That day, the lake roiled as well. She cringed each time she recalled yanking Star's arm, her sister's fall into the lake, remaining a bitter stone forever turning in her stomach. Celia swallowed several times. The wind picked up, shrieking through the trees surrounding Lake Monroe. Celia ducked her head, rowing harder, the flashlight resting on her lap, pointing toward the tangled lily pads. The wooden hull hit a deadhead, the thud muted by the heavy falling snow. The force of the impact tossed Celia to the boat's bottom. Shaken and swearing, she thought she heard the cry of a wounded animal coming from somewhere beyond the surging pads.
Yeah, that was really a powerful scene, and also one of the passages where I slowed down and I just reread the language and just reread the language. It's really beautiful. I felt like your scenic depiction, not to get too writerly on everybody, but I felt like your scenic depiction in this book was pulled into, I mean, I don't know what the setting was based on. I can ask you that, but I felt like I was right in there in this, what's it called? Vinegar
Valley.
Vinegar Valley, yeah. So what was the inspiration for the setting for the book?
So I grew up in Spokane, and there's actually a place in Spokane called Vinegar Valley, and it's just an area where they planted a lot of cabbage, and then the cabbage would rot, and I guess it kind of smelled vinegary. But so it's not really that area, but I also lived in Yakima for a while, where there's a firing range, and I just kind of took pieces from one place and another and put them together into this story of Vinegar Valley. And they have an orchard there in this valley. The Monroes do have an orchard. So I figured the apples probably smell of vinegary if they fall off and rot too. So
right, yeah. So it was a combination of different places that you'd been that inspired this particular fictitious place that you created.
Yes, it's fiction, all of it.
Right. Again, just to be clear, never a stripper. So we're going to invite people to ask some questions. So everybody who's watching, if you want to ask a question, there's a button down below, and then Claire is popping up the chat again. And remember, if you are hoping to come to the book club, you'll want to first of all purchase the book, and those will be autographed. Nancy's going to make sure that all the books are autographed that Village Books has. So when they go out to you, they'll have her awesome, valuable signature on them. And then if you want to sign up for the book club, which is October 22nd, Thursday night at 5:00, then you can pop your email address into the chat, or you can just head over to the Narrative Project Facebook group, which is, let me just give you facebook.com/groups/TNP for writers, like the Narrative Project, TNP for writers. And if you go over there, there's already a link there. You can sign up for the book club. So, and if people have questions for Nancy, pop them in below where it says ask a question, or in the chat. And there are a couple questions down there. So let me open that up. And well, the first one is about how you gained so much insight into a stripper's world. And we know you did talk about being very clear, never a stripper, but how did you do some research on that?
I was writing with a group, and one of the women in the group said, you better do some research. This doesn't sound like a stripper, so I did watch some TV shows that it's strippers. I don't remember if there was any movies or anything in particular, but yeah.
So you just did some observation from a distance.
From a distance. And there was a place that I would drive out in Spokane, out on Sprague, and that it would have the signs as strippers, and they'd be flashing.
Right. Erica has a question. You mentioned that you tend to write stream of consciousness and taking dictation. Did you know how much the story how it would go generally before you started writing the book? Like how much of the outline did you already have in your head, or did you have certain scenes before you started, or did it all just come through you?
I just wrote this book. The plotting, I think I began plotting it later as I went along, but I was just writing whatever came to mind. And I did have some ideas of a few things, but yeah, it just kind of, I think it's a little bit complicated writing sometimes that way, because then you have to start organizing and trying to put the story together. Because if you don't know it when you're writing it, then you have to figure out what the story really is. So there's blanks to fill in.
Right. It's different. It's kind of a different process than writing your memoir, I would guess.
Yes, because you know what the sequence of your memoir is, where you were at different times in your life. But in a novel, um, uh, one one man, Bob Schumacher, that I wrote with in Silverdale before I moved to Bellingham, he always said, keep upping the ante for your character. Keep, make it so your character doesn't get what she or he wants. So I think that was really helpful, because if I up the ante, then something usually happened. And then I had to figure out, either think it out or just put them back in the story and start writing again.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So the process is really, it's really not linear for you at all.
No, it's not linear. It has to become linear later, but as I organize more of it, it isn't and it does leave me feeling confused sometimes.
Yeah. Right. Well, especially if the characters are talking to you, then you're in relationship with them.
Right. And they take over. And people say that as a novelist, that a character will take over. And I really experienced that in this book, that I'm like, oh, okay, well, that's what she's doing.
Right. Right. It's not like you're totally in control of it.
No.
Right. So there's another question here that asks, what did you learn about yourself through the writing of this book?
What did I learn about myself, besides that I'm not a stripper? I think that in my family there was some waywardness, some stepping out that was going on. And I think I learned a little bit in my own nature where I could potentially have that characteristic as well, although I didn't.
Mm-hmm.
That I think watching Celia and her appetite was an interesting part of the book.
Yeah. Right. She was such an interesting character. I loved her as a female character because she was strong. She knew who she was, and although there was a lot of pain there, she also didn't compromise. She stood up for herself in ways that were surprising to me in the book. Yeah.
That is actually another thing I did learn in writing the 3 books, that the 2 before it, is that the characters did some things that I didn't do. And I said, oh, well, maybe I could have done it that way. But even though I hadn't done it that way, that their behavior seemed to strengthen me somehow.
Right. Right. That's you could channel the characters. Even you were the channel for the characters in the writing of the book. So maybe you could channel some of their ways of being in the world and life too. That's interesting.
Yeah.
There's a question here, Nancy. I think we have time for a few more questions. There's a lot of good questions popping up in the book, in the box. So Katie Dexter asks, I feel that redemption is a minor theme in this book. Can you talk a bit about that? Talk about redemption as one of the themes.
So, as far as maybe the preacher being owning what he was about in Celia's life, he didn't really get a chance to do that. And I think I don't know if he was going to do it, even if something else hadn't changed in the story. So, and as far as her own redemption, with her boyfriend Jay, she never really faced that, because I think she was still exploring what her heart really wanted and what she thought she's supposed to do, rather than what she was doing.
Right.
If that makes sense.
No, it does to me. I feel like the redemption is still it's being explored, but it's still hanging out there. It's still like, this is interesting. What would have happened if full redemption had occurred, or what could happen? I feel like it's a question that's being held in the story and explored.
And for me, when I was doing my own healing, it's very rare for a perpetrator to say, "Oh yeah, I did it, and I have horribleness inside of me." Yeah, that doesn't generally happen. I don't think. I don't think we see it even in the public eye these days.
Right.
The people that actually say, "Oh yes, this is me, and I got to go work on myself."
Right. Take ownership. Yeah.
More unusual.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Oh, here's one. Do you think there will be a follow-up to Celia's Heaven, or will you revisit any of the characters?
Well, I have kind of an idea about I've been wanting to, I think since I was a child, I've wanted to write a mystery. I actually wanted to be a writer when I was a child. So, and I love to read mysteries. I love to watch them. And then I was thinking, gosh, there are those people. There's some people, the boy in the lake that I read about. What happened there? And there's some other little places I think could lead into a sequel where either Celia would begin investigating or something, or maybe she'd investigate with Jay since he's on the police force.
Right.
Maybe he'd be the detective in charge.
Right.
I don't know though. I don't know.
So you're mulling it over, but we're not committed to it yet.
That's right.
Right. Let's see. Oh, here's kind of a fun question. Did you have any character with whom you argued or had to negotiate? Like, was there anybody who tried to take over or who wanted to do something that you didn't want them to do in the story?
Maybe a little bit with the preacher. He might have been a little bit like wanting to do some things that, yeah, not too much though, I don't think.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I'm just noticing in the comments that Amy Cushman says, or a prequel, that she'd be interested in more about the mom and the girls as children. So.
Oh, Amy, yes. That's actually a really good way to write a story to go back in time before something happens, and I could see those twins as playing by the lake, and there's the cemetery they like to probably run around and climb on the stones and stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, and then there's the grandfather with the spontaneous. He almost drowns, and then he has the Monroe miracle, and so I had some curiosity about that storyline too. Like, ooh, who are the grandparents here?
And he was the one that had warnings too. He had some warnings about the fence line or something. Yeah.
Right. Let's see. Oh, Diane Wood wants to know, do you feel like you had help from the paranormal world in writing this story?
So this is really interesting. So two things. Well, more than two things probably, but what's popping into my head is that paranormal things have sort of happened around this book. So even when we had our first talk and we both were wearing necklaces, and I started to tell you about my interest in Mary sightings around the world, and you told me you had been to Fatima and to Lourdes. So I just thought, this is the thing that has happened with this book, as little things have come to light that are there. It's like the book has a little magic to it. Yes.
Yeah, it does feel that way to me. I mean, even holding it in my hand, there's sort of like this softness to it that feels very magical.
And it's a good magic.
Definitely a good magic for sure. Let's see.
No,
you go ahead.
I was also wondering about the guidance around some of the names and things, because I had a friend who's she's actually has a press, and she said, "It's Vinegar Valley. That's what you called it?" And I go, "Yeah." And she goes, "They washed Jesus' feet with vinegar. Mary washed Jesus' feet with vinegar." And I was like, "No, I didn't know that."
That's so interesting.
Yeah. So interesting little things.
Yeah. We did but we had a lot of synchronicities in planning for this. Like like we were both wearing the same color and the pendant. And then when I jumped on today, we were in the same color. And you're like, we're in the same color. I guess I wouldn't have changed. But that was fun. Okay, maybe we have time for one more. Let's see. How about Mary Lou asks, do you get inspiration from your dreams? And if so, how do you capture those details? Yeah, that's a good question.
That's a really good question. I every day, when I wake up, that's what probably the first thing I say to Ron is, "Did you have any dreams?" I love my dream life. I just love it. And I don't always capture I don't remember always, of course, like everybody, it just fades so quickly. But I have kind of experimented a little bit with my dreams and taking my dreams into writing. And as I've played with them in poetry, because usually they're kind of random and they don't really always make a lot of sense to me. I was trying to remember what I dreamt last night, because I did remember that one this morning, but it's not coming back right now. But yes, I've definitely played with it in poetry. I think probably a lot more so than like a storyline for a book. Although I have thought, wouldn't that be kind of cool? Is every day you wake up and like, oh, here's the story for today in the dream or in the book.
I know. Wouldn't that be amazing if you went to sleep and then you woke up and you had your assignment from your dream, so what you were supposed to write that day? Why doesn't it work that way, Nancy? I don't know. What about for your art? Do you think that your dream life inspires your art in any way? Your visual art?
I don't think so, really, but I do know that years ago I had a dream where I went up this tall set of stairs, and at the top there was a door I opened, and inside of that door was a painting, and that's what this building is.
Oh, no kidding. Oh my goodness. You're very like aware of the other realm, it seems like. Well, what we can do, I think we'll bring Claire back on and make sure that we don't miss any housekeeping. And just want to remind people again to buy the book. We are going to have a book club, so we're going to get to pick Nancy's brain about all kinds of things that are related to craft, publication, getting ideas, working with rough draft, working with once you have that big rough draft, how you start to sculpt it into a storyline. And so we're just going to have a chance to really ask her any question that we want to. And we'll use the book as a text, but we'll also just get to dish about the story because it's such a great story. So,
and Cami, we do have an easy way to do that. I can email everybody who registered for this event. So if you send me the link or whatever it is, then I'll just email everybody the information on how they can sign up for that event.
Oh, that's so much easier than taking screenshots all the way.
Also, I'm so curious. I don't know if I missed it somehow, like I blinked and maybe I missed it, but there was a question I was really hoping she was going to answer about what chapter or scene was the most difficult for you to write. Did you answer that one, Nancy?
No, great question.
Because I'm very curious about that. Was there a scene or a chapter in the book that was, what was the most difficult part of the book for you to write?
I think it was difficult when Celia got so, she was in bed and she knew what had happened. And she was trying to get up and go out with her father and have some oatmeal. I think that whole area was real. That was hard. It was tougher to write that,
and it was hard. It was hard to read too. In the way it should have been. It was uncomfortable to read, which very effective writing.
Right. Yeah. As it would be, and it's like it was exactly the right effect.
Yeah.
For the reader.
Yeah.
Oh. Good stuff. Well, I want to just say one more time, like, super congratulations, and I'm so proud of you and so excited about your book, and really hope that everybody buys it and reads it and comes and talks to us about it. And And Claire, thank you so much for being an awesome hostess.
Oh gosh, well, it's my pleasure. And Nancy has been a long time friend of Village Books. She's been coming to Village Books for as long as I can remember. So
I used to call it just the store when I was living there in Bellingham. I'll be over at the store because there was only one store in Fairhaven here.
nice, the store.
I really appreciate Village Books, and thank you so much, Claire, for this organizing everything. It's really great.
It's my pleasure, as I said, and everybody who is here tonight and who registered, be looking for an email that has information about that book group. You said it's October 22nd,
right?
That is such a great idea, and I'm so glad that you're doing that. So, and remember that we will have, Nancy hasn't signed the copies of the books yet, but she's going to very soon. So if you order books from Village Books, your copies will be signed. So thank everyone for coming tonight. This was so, it's incredible to me how in these virtual events, I can still feel the love. I didn't think that was going to be possible, but
yeah. So great to see everybody here tonight. Thanks for everybody for attending, and what a fun launch. And your flowers in the background from your sister are gorgeous too. Just want to call those out because those are so pretty. Yeah.
Yes.
Very beautiful. My sister Loretta.
Yeah, Loretta.
My book is dedicated to her because we're sisters.
That makes sense. Yeah, I love that. I have to say, I love a good sister story. I'm a sister too, so I love a story about sisters. So, all right. Well, I think. Oh, and there's Loretta saying thanks, Nancy. All right. Well, I think we'll end on that note. Thank you all again, and hope I'll see you soon.
Yeah. Lots of love, everybody.
Thank you, everybody, for coming. Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Cami.
Okay.